And so we embark on another exceptional story. The Season of Stones. We're engaged in a conversation with a financially savvy alley cat when a haggard parliamentarian runs around the corner. He grabs us by the shoulders. "Help me," he cries before continuing his run. Another man turns sharply around the corner. Mr. Huffam, editor of the unexpurgated London Gazette. He surveys the street. When he spies the parliamentarian, his eyes narrow. He advances, drawing a pen and a notebook. Do we politely distract Huffam? Do we chase down the parliamentarian for Huffam? Or do we continue our conversation with the alley cat? Parliament is in the river. Huffam looks eager to tell a story the parliamentarian doesn't want to be a part of. It'd be nice to hold a politician accountable for once. In 2017, there is no other option than this. Something's going to give. We grab the haggard parliamentarian as he's about to escape into a hansom. Huffam approaches and flips to a clean sheet on his notepad. "I've already told you I've nothing anymore. Please don't quote me," the parliamentarian cries as Huffam records the conversation. "There's no hope you can offer those unhoused children? No answer for the clay question?" asks Huffam. The parliamentarian shakes his head. Huffam sighs and asks us to release him. The parliamentarian takes the opportunity to flee. He does not look back. The exploited won't abide forever. If you witness anything, send it to the unexpurgated Gazette. We're paying attention. How much is that worth? 4 maniacs' prayers. 25 minutes worth $2.50. For one action, can I do it again? No, I see now we've got a return to your study kind of a thing. That's not available yet. That's not available yet. But this one is. So, the Season of Stones, the people awakening, the powerful whisper of discontent and fear for their position. The downtrodden, the desperate and the ignored seethe at their plight. Something is bound to give, and soon. Find out what's happening in the city. Are things really about to boil over? The Gazette will pay. And this is just what happened today. Venture out again and we may see something new. Gloomy news. The rich are testing the loyalty of their servants by leaving slivers of never-cold brass beneath their carpets. If the underpaid servant takes the metal, they are summarily fired. The practice has sparked pamphlets, protests, and possibly one unsolved case of arson. What else might there be? Go. Gloomy news. The pantomimes of Mahogany Hall sparked protest amongst the well-to-do after conducting another barbed attack on a popular society matron. The general public, however, has never been so keen to support the arts. Scandalous. What else? Gloomy news. A newly popular street preacher demands, why do the devils insist their help comes at the price of your soul? If they truly cared for your well-being, why not build a soup kitchen with all their riches? That's a very strange thing to ask of hell, but I like it. What more? There are more rough sleepers in the street tonight. Their signs are scribbled in shoe polish, asking for food, for work, to simply be seen. That one was less fun. Special constables are breaking apart groups of 10 or more, unless, of course, the members of the party wear donsies or fadgeted daughters. Privilege, private law. Go. Another walkout in the factories. Workers are demanding guardrails over their catwalks after someone fell into a molten vat again. A Bernie, I guess. There we go. We found a repeat. We'll do just one more to see if we get another repeat. Yeah, repeats now. So, unrest. Good. We will unlock the Clayman's arm. Clunk. We've unlocked it and may play it at our leisure. An unexpected surgery. We awake at an uncertain time, the sheet crumpled and twisted around our neck. A candle burns low on the dresser. In the dim light, we spot a few dried brown stains on the bed. Blood? Where did we go last night? When did we fall asleep? Examine our left arm. Our left side feels heavy. Rolling over is a tad more difficult than usual. Our shoulder is sore while the arm is numb. Made of clay, our arm is bulky, the shade of cobbles. It's been stuffed into our shoulder with no sign of stitches. The skin around it is swollen, resting on the clay. Could it be peeled back? With effort, we can flex our fingers, but any sensation is muffled. We manage to grip the headboard and pull ourselves up out of bed. There is no sign of our usual fleshy limb. The arm hardens and grows clumsier. We don't recall signing a single form. Unfortunately, there was a clay man who was proselytizing whom I did not think to speak to. It's a shame. He was mumbling in Lomsprach. Morning preparations. We search our lodgings for evidence of what occurred. Morning preparations. We search our lodgings for evidence of what occurred. Beside the scant bloodstains on our bed, there's nothing out of place. That is, until our new clay arm knocks over a side table. Before we seek answers in the city, we must confront our morning routine. At the thought of the tasks ahead, our flesh fist clenches. The clay one merely hangs. Let us examine it. I'm tempted to skip it and just sprint out into the morning, but no, we'll examine the arm. The clay is much less smooth than it first appeared. Pits and gouges mar the surface, while ribbons of shale weave through the clay. The arm is like dull marble. The pattern seems distinctive. If this arm once belonged to a clay man, it would be possible to identify him. Carved into the arm, just above the elbow, is what looks like a correspondence letter. What could be its purpose? Ooh, you know how to engage me. All right, we'll light the fire. We were fortunate. A roaring blaze. The kindling is cracked and the ground littered with discarded matches. But we now have a decent fire going. The arm, however, is not loosened with the heat. It is still clumsy and stiff. Prepare breakfast. Still fortunate, a fortifying meal. The toast is rather dry. Opening a pot of jam without shattering it requires too much dexterity for our current state. At least the teapot can be poured with one hand. While not the best breakfast we have experienced, it suffices. Stiff upper lip. Get dressed. Unlucky. Torn hemlines. Halfway in, the sleeves seem rather snug. After we attempt to force the issue, it is soon ripped to shreds. This does not bode well. We do not have an infinite supply of sleeves. We did it. Bulky arm or no, we are fed and fit to be seen by most. Finally, a use for the oversized gift from our aunt. This will look ridiculous, but this garment hides the arm well enough. Alas, there's nothing to be done about concealing our stone fingernails. We have managed a passable simulacrum of an ordinary morning. The arm is ossifying. A hefty gray arm is no excuse to forego our morning routine. Into the city, we feel more human now and better prepared to face the day. Let's start with this damn arm. The arm hardens. As we walk the street of London in search of answers, the arm feels even clumsier, stiffer, more like the lifeless clay it was fashioned from. Our shoulder already aches from the weight. The skin around the clay is stretched and dry. We require advice and leads. Even now the limb worsens, but our own arm must be somewhere in the city. Onwards, clay men toil throughout London, wherever drudgery can be turned to profit. All over the city, hands just like our new gray one grip shovels and picks. Can the owners of those hands shed light on our imputation? The clay men congregate in the clay quarters under Ladybones Road. Perhaps we can find answers there. The arm is worsening, it grows clumsier. All right. So, yes, unfortunately the proselytizing clay man is indeed gone. I really wanted to hear what he had to say. Oh well, onward to Ladybones Road. We'll see if I can find it. A sculpted scowl. Oh, that's Face Taylor. Blech. Ladybones. The case of the clay arm. The clay men cluster in their quarter and work throughout the city. We may struggle to elicit aid or answers from them. They are reluctant speakers, even with each other. Begin the case of the clay arm. The arm was somehow attached to us, and, judging from its wear, probably but previously belonged to a clay man. Not an overwhelming number of facts, but enough to begin. Go. These options are slow and steady, or there are better avenues on opportunities. Someone at the university may have come across the letter before. What did the clay men say when speaking amongst themselves? Injured or broken, they lead dangerous lives. They must require regular repairs. A surgeon might have some insight, but we require an adventurous one. We require the advice of someone steeped in the gossip of London. Well, that seems like, I would rather see the specifics, I suppose. Is this just a normal investigation? I guess I'll consume my dream about a face. I do not know anyone. Oh, fuck, that is a new option. Oh well. Have you ever felt so alone before? No more friends here, no friends anywhere. Lonely, friendless, alone. But that's not what we're looking for either. So what if we go to university? Always my first interest is the correspondence. Looks like we can't do anything too wild here. Maybe we need to draw opportunities here. Go back to Lady Bones and just progress with the slow-ass options. Sure, I'll trade in a snippet for some wisdom. Detective's progress. Is that really a connection? It seems possible. These are so generic. They make me so sad. Alright, I'm going to put you on pause until I've got something. Thanks. Well, that didn't take very long, did it? We've made a discovery. Clay men are found in factories and grubby corners. They clean, haul, and mine. They also speak, and occasionally lie. I'd like to know about the correspondence sigil. There we are. Find a way to examine the sigil on our arm. We've never seen this particular correspondence letter before. Looking directly at it may be unwise. Ejected. A woman with a deliberately ill-defined position at the university starts when we show her the mark. She hurries us to out of our cramped office, her sallow cheeks quivering. In the hall, we press our ear against her door. We hear pen scratches and her murmuring, forever circling, never drawing closer, never drawing apart. To this day, I think the correspondence has a direct tie to gravity. What else is love between astral bodies? Put together scraps of information, hopefully worth more than excellent 6. Yes, that would work. Another development. Investigate the frontiers of medicine. An sufficiently intrepid doctor might have insight into how this procedure was carried out. A telling lack of stitches. The doctor was recommended as brave, innovative, and worryingly experimental. Nevertheless, he is reluctant to examine the arm. You haven't been fraternizing with any unsavory characters. He doesn't elaborate, instead pinching the elbow joint with old forceps. It will most likely fail, he says. I hear their sort eventually does. They run down, like a clock. Once it's fully inert, do come back. I wouldn't mind examining it further. The arm is rather clumsy, and it grows clumsier. Frequent key locations. We should buy some Greyfields, because that's a really expensive thing right there. Give me 3, 5. Was it a different vintage? It was this vintage. 3. Cash it in. 6 more. No, of course we won't tell a soul. Absolutely. Another glass, anyone? We've made a discovery. Consult with Mr. Hopham. Mr. Hopham, editor of the Unexpurgated Gazette, is supposedly collecting material related to the Claymen. A special issue. Hopham gestures over his shoulder to a pile of documents. Been meaning to write an issue on the plight of the Claymen, but haven't quite found an angle. They do seem intent on providing material nowadays. Seeing our confusion, he taps his desk. In my profession, one learns to take the temperature. The Claymen and others are making noise. 7 more souls, and we can speak to the devils. The exchange, of course. Where else would you sell a soul? Our contact is familiar with the affair. She shares what she knows, speculating wickedly on the motives of those involved. Another development? Oh, we should probably consume this first, because that will be worth 3, and that will be enough to finish us. So, 2 actions from now, we can continue. Join me there. While we wait on more actions on several bats, here we have the proselytizer. Outside a row of factories, a Clayman preaches, his gravelly voice sprinkled with Loamsprach. He exhorts his fellows to volunteer for experiments. A scholar seeks to melt flesh and clay. An injudicious dockhand spits on the cobbles. "And the days in it, they want to be flesh, walk around like the rest of us? Where you think they're getting the flesh, eh?" He taps his nose in fierce conspiracy. Consider the implications. Melding flesh and clay is impossible, which explains why it's such an intriguing prospect. Intriguing potential. If such rumors are true, they are ghastly. We say as much to the injudicious dockhand. Granted, it would be a feat of surgery, admirable from a purely academic perspective. Would the flesh dominate the clay, or has this mysterious surgeon discovered properties common to the 2 materials? We discover the dockhand abandoned us in the middle of such musings, terribly rude, and showcasing a depressing lack of interest in intellectual pursuits. Can we also dismiss the poor guy? Looks like we need to go to a 3rd character to dismiss him. One moment. And let's dismiss his ramblings. Claymen organizing a being of both flesh and clay. Such suggestions are ludicrous, preposterous even, not to mention too dreadful for contemplation. Compliance. The Claymen are the backbone of London, the unquestioning engine of industry. They are dependable. We say as much to the injudicious dockhand, who spits again. "Not very comforting. They're not dependable. We depend on them." Well, that's an insight. Anyway, we'll return when we've got enough actions to push through in the rest of the story. A dream about whispers. We dream that we're standing on the deck of a tall ship. It's night. Thunder rumbles in the sky, but the sea is flat as a mirror. From beneath the deck we hear a whisper, rising and falling. North. North. And we're back, if briefly. We've made a discovery in the case. We'll need to eavesdrop on clay gossip, chiefly Loamsprach, but we may glean something. Let's leave that for last, actually. Watch a series of repairs. While often damaged in their work, broken claymen are rare. Their bodies are patched and filled whenever a fracture or chip threatens their stability. Trowels and cooperation. A group stands with trowels and buckets, applying fresh clay skin onto fractures on each other's bodies. No job is ever quite perfect. Perhaps this is deliberate. Cracks and divots cover their bodies, especially the hands. Many claymen share similar faces. Do they tell each other apart by the scars? One notices our arm. It's difficult to tell without an expression, but he refuses to acknowledge us. It seems he's frightened or disgusted. Later we overhear him speaking to his companions. While he does not mention an arm outright, he refers to our donning the clay. It grows still clumsier. The clay men's healing is much the rest of their lives, steady and laborious. What? I swear we had another action. Nonsense. Oh well, back shortly. Let's make a little more quick progress here. Another development. Eavesdropping on clay gossip, chiefly Loamsprach, but we may glean something. Debates. 2 clay men stand facing a wall, speaking without turning their heads. One argues that clay is a substance, not a state of being. A clay man made of flesh would merely be a person. The other changes the subject, though not before disparaging the work of an unnamed scholar. Looks like we need one more. For a skilled detective, this is a safe option. Damn it. 1 extra action. 2 extra actions. Alright, well. At any rate. What? It says we still have an action over here. Looks like we don't. Well, that was irritating. Back soon. Alright. Here we are. Rumors abound of a clay scholar and his patients. Maybe his subjects. We should seek him out. Preachers or patients. We have garnered that clay men of unusual appearance and temperament can be found in certain alleyways. They spout mysticism and speak of strange procedures. Not much to go on. But the quarter is thrumming with talk of broken clay and rising tempers. This may be all we have. The arm is hardly usable. The clay men do not suffer their situation in complete silence. Where to next, then? A glimpse of flesh. As we walk through this part of the clay quarter, someone hands us a pamphlet declaring the end of unnamed divisions. Clay men cluster without clear purpose. Conversations hush when we approach. 2 somber clay men stare as we loiter on a corner. The arm is insensate. It hardly bends. A distracted-looking clay man bumps into our shoulder and we sprawl on the cobbles. He offers us a hand. We recognize it. After all, it is ours. Waxy skin. He helps us to our feet. Was our hand always so cold? Will our clay one become warm? He seems agitated, but not by our presence. Perhaps he was searching for us. He points at our clay arm with his own. "That is mine," he says. "I would like it back." The Cisoisian has joined us. The Cisoisian clay man. The Cisoisian has a flat brow and a small chip missing, or is it Theseus-ian? Cisoisian. I'm sticking to the German. Has a flat brow and a small chip missing from his nose. The flesh arm inserted into his shoulder looks thin and withered next to his broad chest. He glances around sharply every few moments, a tick we have not seen in his type before. He curls the flesh limb protectively against his torso. Ask who did this. We've heard whispers of a clay scholar. Are they responsible? Looks like we'll have to do both of these. The scholar probes boundaries, flesh and clay. Some listen, a few submit. The Cisoisian appears reluctant to provide details even when pressed. Where can the scholar be found? What are they doing? The laboratory is hidden. Some of my kind do not approve. Hardly any humans would. We are acquainted with him. We've listened to his story, such as it is. Could we meet the scholar? He has conditions. The scholar is clay. He works not with our blessing, but our tolerance. But the others do not know this pain. He holds up his interloping arm. This flesh is sickness. He looks around again, but doesn't seem to be watching for others of his kind. He ignores a group of clay men standing by. I will take you. I would have us undo his work. The Thesoisians demand. The Thesoisian waits to hear our response. His request is predictable enough. Aid him in swapping arms, most likely by confronting this clay scholar. I was tempted to keep it, but if he really wants to he wants his own arm back. It's not right to keep his arm for myself, just out of curiosity. We agree to the Thesoisian's demands, in principle at least. We'll both confront this scholar and force him to swap our limbs back. No discovery is worth this creeping, stiff pain. The hidden laboratory awakes. A hidden laboratory, winding through the tunnels to the Thesoisian, leads us deep into the clay quarter. A hidden laboratory. We have not seen a soft cheek for an hour. He stops outside an arched opening. A sign hangs above, unreadable from age. A school at one point, long before I arrived. There was a mistaken belief among humans that we required education. The arm is insensate. It hardly bends. The door is unlocked, and the place seems quiet. We may be here for some time. The foyer lacks a carpet or a coat rack. There is a thick coat of dust, but that is expected in this quarter. We hear nothing. The Thesoisian directs us to a small staircase off the hall. Down, he says. He allows us to descend first. Politeness or hesitation? The bowels of the hidden laboratory. The lower chambers are a muddle of rooms. Failed experiments and shattered equipment litter the floor. Some rooms look abandoned mid-procedure, while others might have been smashed, perhaps by a frustrated researcher or a recalcitrant subject. In the corner of one room we see a bundle of runny clay and matted hair. Well, that's horrifying. Speak to the devotees, the subjects. 3 clay men wander the halls. Each possesses a flesh body part thanks to the scholar's experiments. The 3 clay subjects have all gone wrong in their own way. One speechless, one sightless, one starving. They tell us they carry the scholar's words up to the rest of the quarter, seeking others to don flesh as they have, or at least force the clay men to confront the truth of their station. The most fervent one has a bloated, blackened tongue. He disapproves of our surgery if we understand his gurgling. Enough, the Thesoisian says. The 3 subjects shuffle away when he approaches. They are worthless, fanatics or victims, granted different flesh, but rotting all the same. The basement is huge, filled with room after cluttered room. Papers and equipment lie discarded, limbs as well. Let's search among the discarded equipment. Disused tools and specialized equipment are stacked on tables. What is labeled on that chart? Sharpened knives. Blocks of stone suspended in jars sit near clamps larger than our leg. Scalpels with whisper-thin edges are embedded in skin-flecked bones. A contraption of straps and thin pipes hangs from the ceiling. The chart we noticed seems to be outlining the human body, but it illustrates organs we've never seen before. Is that a cube where the liver should be? Sneak by the sightless clay subject. The sightless clay subject has cavities bored into his face in which deflated eyeballs sit. He gropes along, alert for intruders. Slipping past, the sightless is the bitterest of the 3, but has turned his anger toward creatures of flesh instead of the scholar. He's crept away from his companions to find us and unleash his frustrations. Heavy clay hands swipe at the air. We duck beneath them and sidle away. When he realizes he's lost us, he rages. You don't deserve the clay. The Thesoisian watches with some interest but makes no move to help. He has nothing to fear from his comrade, but he will not interfere. Well, it looks like the middle option is fastest. Oh no, we got more options now. Ask the Thesaurian what troubles him, decipher a pamphlet, and converse with a dead-tongued subject. Well, I'll be back in a bit when I've got more actions to check those out. Ask the Thesaurian what troubles him. Despite his familiarity with the lab, the contents seem to have unsettled the Thesaurian. He appears confused. Sorrow instead. He's convinced we hold answers for him. He was searching for us as we prowled the quarter, and is upset he's not learned more from us. But what could we know that he doesn't? I was whole, complete. Now, am I remade? His disparate hands meet, or unfinished? That wasn't worth anything. That's annoying. Decipher a Longsprach pamphlet. A stack of pamphlets sits near the stairs. When he's not submitting to experiments, the sightless hands them out on certain streets. This also didn't give us any exhortations. Longsprach layers upon itself. Its meaning arises from neologisms and overlapping contexts. This text contains an undercurrent of revolt. The writing uses the atmosphere to plead for other clay men to come to the scholar, and, like his subjects, don the flesh. Only then, this writer argues, will they understand their true position in London. The writer repeatedly refers to boundaries and margins of all kinds. In the bowels of the hidden laboratory, converse with the dead-tongued subject. His speech is in a bygone tongue of sorts. He mumbles and coughs, the useless muscle flopping in his mouth. Illuminating, if garbled. He's very interested in the surgery the scholar has performed on us. He's erudite, though we only catch half of his meaning due to his gurgling speech. Something about probing boundaries, producing its own kind of illumination. When questioned as to whether this is the scholar's belief, the dead-tongued subject gives a vast clay shrug. He changes the subject, challenging us to elucidate the origin of flesh. He swiftly interrupts, dismissing birth as a mere consequence. Or perhaps he said complication. What is clear is his claim that he was never born, not in this lab, nor on a faraway island. His lecturing eventually ceases. Our head aches with the strain of comprehending him. I guess we were progressing. The bowels of the hidden laboratory. The lower chambers are a muddle of rooms, failed experiments, and shattered equipment. Yes, we've already seen this, right? Ask the Thesaurian if he remembers the surgery. Was he awake while his arm was removed? Did he object? The scholar envisioned the task, performed the labor as I watched, but I did not volunteer. Very deeper still, and the smell of embalming fluid is everywhere. Sift through discarded limbs. Piles of shrunken, dried limbs are stacked like firewood in a mix of flesh and clay. Obscure origins. The pile contains limbs of meat and limbs of clay. The flesh ones were efficiently severed, but we cannot say whether the clay ones were taken from clay men or crafted for this purpose. There are a few oddities. A clay foot with human toenails, a large brown heart streaked with bright marble, and a soft lump of clay more malleable than the rest. Squeezing it produces a clear fluid that smells of smoke. An organ, perhaps? Few have ever seen the interior of a clay man. We're nearing the heart. Inquire why the Thesaurian was chosen. If he didn't volunteer, why is our damn arm attached to him? I broke a law. The others judged I was no longer fit to be counted among them. Others? Is there a clay council? Are there clay laws? The laws traveled with us. We interpret them and pass judgment together. Comfort the unfed subject. The unfed subject moans, bent over in pain. His stomach demands food, but he lacks the throat to swallow. Sympathy pangs. He once poured soap down his throat. The broth now festers at a dead end just above his sternum. We can smell the rotting food in the stale air. If he breathed, it would be even worse. The hunger is all-consuming, but our conversation helps him remember a life hauling crates instead of curled up on a stone floor. His moaning quiets, allowing us to focus on our exploration. And here we are. Enter the scholar's den. There's light coming from beneath one door. We hear a rough scraping inside. This must be it. A sharp, clean scent. The room is smaller than we expected, the ceiling low enough to touch. It is as cluttered as the rest of the place, but the apparatuses inside are intact and several are in use. We smell disinfectant, along with an undercurrent of stale copper. The scraping comes from the other end of the room, where a clay man bends over a table. He looks thinner than others we've encountered. He takes notes with one hand while the other holds a scalpel. Vials, scalpels, and clumps of hardened earth. The room is crowded with shelves and bubbling equipment. The clay man, hunched over a brightly lit operating table, must be the scholar. He wears glasses, perhaps as an affectation. His teeth are bared in concentration as he cuts into a stone block. They are ivory white, human. Far too early for me to examine the results, he says. I would prefer if you wait until I send for you. Our arm is a rigid lump of clay dragging alongside. Ask about the sigil in our clay arm. Four at most. So it looks like we can do most of these, actually. His aim is not his arms. Tell me about the sigil. A relation symbolized. He will not divulge how or where he came across, or even if the Bazaar knows about this usage, but he does explain its purpose in his surgery. The key is recognizing that interactions between the two materials, while malleable, already exist. Clay and flesh stand in relation already. That letter is necessary for the procedure, but only to affirm what already stands. The Slytherin raises a hand, perhaps to object or to question. The scholar ignores him. On the nearby table, whatever is under the sheet moans. The scholar is absorbed. So now we have one. Why did he choose me? There's something from his past haunting us now. Lovers and early drafts. There were 2 lovers, yes, using a stolen copy of my early research. I heard you were involved, so assumed you would be interested, and if you weren't, it would serve as a suitable punishment for interfering. As for this one, he sneers at the Slytherin. Was necessary to prove that unwillingness is no barrier to the procedure. You were a natural pairing. The scholar probes and slices. The Slytherin watches, growing agitated. We get 2 more. I guess we're just not going to submit to his questions. The boundaries of flesh. Please do not flatter yourself into believing you are some sort of culmination. He does not look up. Instead, he concentrates on a pustule-like growth on the stone block. He pokes at it with a scalpel. The donning of flesh is of more interest to me, but I need to see if I was creating a transgression or a kind of transcendence. Divisions are states of being, you see. His experiment is nearly concluded. I believe we can observe him at work and then still attack him. Delicate work. The scholar slices off greenish patches from the block, adding them to one side of a scale. On the other sits a liver or something like it. For now, the lump of meat weighs more. On a table nearby under a large sheet, something misshapen breathes. A gurgling sound comes from under the sheet, and as the scholar pulls it back, we catch a glimpse of bloody clay. We will not submit to his questions, we will attack. His experiments are horrid, and at least some of his patients, including us, are unwilling. This is truly barbarous. An easy target. His back is turned, and the Slytherin is at our side. Oh, it looks like I didn't signal disapproval enough. Interrupting, the Slytherin keeps our flesh arm tight against his body, reaching forward with his own hefty gray counterpart. The scholar works, unaware of his patient stalking toward him. I think that this is fair, though. Broken. The scholar is too absorbed in his work to notice the two of us. Our work is swift. His enamel teeth crack from the blows. The Thesoisian brings a heavy foot down, crushing the scholar's shin. He lies on the ground. His foot twitches at the end of his flattened leg. The commotion disturbs the figure under the sheet, which shudders and groans. Our actions have gained us time to search the laboratory. All the papers are all in some sort of code. But we come across a bundle of notes which include repeated mentions of our name, an outline of our surgery. If deciphered, they may shed light on the procedure. A mess of code in shorthand, but it looks like a simple substitution system. Pressing onward. It's fortunate the scholar did not write in Loamsprach. Did he distrust his own assistants and subjects, perhaps? No matter. Once we recognize the substitutions, the notes are fairly intelligible. The clay scholar wrote little on reversing or modifying his procedures. His interest lay entirely with the affected subjects and their tolerance for the process. But through guesswork and some first-hand knowledge of anatomy, we cobble together the information we require. With these insights in hand, we can attempt to undo the procedure with a moderate degree of confidence. Improvised surgery. In one of the many half-abandoned rooms in this basement, we find a clean table and the necessary tools. The Thesoisian joins us. From his craggy brow, we're able to tell he is anxious. Most would not notice. It's tempting, but I don't think that I'm going to do that. We will keep our word and give the poor clay his clay back when we have another action. See you soon. Improvised surgery. In one of the many half-abandoned rooms in this basement, we find a clean table and the necessary tools. The Thesoisian joins us. From his craggy brow, we are able to tell he is anxious. Most will not notice. Yes, swap arms. Neatly done. Peeling back the skin around our clay arm, we find that it is attached by strips of what look like black felt. Slicing them away reduces sensation in the arm, and after the last one is cut, the bulky clay falls to the table. The flesh of our shoulder is moist, but does not bleed. The Thesoisian picks away at his shoulder, removing the clay overlapping the flesh arm. He exposes pulsating blisters which hold the limb in place. There's a slurping pop as he pulls the arm out of its socket. He sets to work on us with a needle and thread. We return the favor with a trowel. Afterward, he flexes his returned arm. Is there not more labor? This cannot be all. We need to do something about this new accessory. Onward, leaving the hidden laboratory. The route back to the streets of London is clear. We overcame any obstacles on the way in, and the clay scholar will not impede us. The 3 clay subjects allowed us to pass without incident. But perhaps we should take this opportunity to influence them. Let's speak to them first. Anything but indifference. The sightless hears us approach. In the minutes we've been away, his thoughts have grown bleaker. He now questions the existence of the scholar, or that he ever saw the world. He's lost his self more than his sight. Was he ever truly clay? The dead-tongued is giddy. He watched us leave the scholar's lab and now insists we are a new herald of the scholar's mysticism. He claims the scholar's experimentation on us proves that transcendence and transgression are identical. He wonders mumblingly if his clay tongue may one day be returned to him. The unfed subject asks for nothing. Yes, we'll convince them to leave. Throw open the door and speak of a better life. The strength found indifference. They might take us up on the offer. This will leave the lab forever. Heroism of a sort. We speak of the streets of London, remind them of the clay community they once belonged to. We speculate that knowledge of their condition might be found at the university. Our speech inspires the unfed. He may focus on something besides hunger. He mounts the stairs with support from the sightless. Still plagued by doubts, the sightless professes an affection for his companion, and so chooses to follow him. The dead-tongued stays, believing the laboratory is the only hope of being wholly clay again. The Thesoisian disapproves of it all. They will be rejected. No clay will take them in. They will always suffer. Once outside, he turns down an alley. He does not look back. Epilogue. Divisions probed. The broken matches and shredded cloth from the morning's exertions remain. Sweeping them up is exhausting. Our shoulder still aches from carrying the clay arm. This renewed balance is awkward, as if the clay we discarded persists, phantom weight imposed on our flesh arm. A message from the Thesoisian. A package and a note arrived minutes ago. We did not see who delivered it, but the clay handwriting is easily recognized. Rendered unfinished. The Thesoisian man does not inform us of his present circumstances. It seems best to assume he has returned to previous labors with nothing more than a hairline crack above his bicep. He does state that the cure has not changed his outlook. He worries that to be unfinished is an inescapable sentence. Worse, it could simply be an outlook. He can no longer recall how he used to feel before the surgery, or what infractions which caused him to be sent to the scholar's lab. Perhaps he has always been this way. Regardless, he encloses a gift of thanks, as sorts. Just a nodule of pulsing amber? That's not very impressive. Well, that was an interesting... okay. I guess maybe I should have kept the arm. Well, there it is. This month's exceptional story.